Rachele, thank you for joining us on the Zora Talks podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Well, let's just jump right in. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what has your journey been and what led you to LIFEWE360?
Sounds good. Yeah, so I'm Rachele Louis. I'm co-founder for LIFEWE360. I'm originally from New York City. I currently live in Chicago by way of the Bay Area. My journey as an entrepreneur actually started when I decided to go back to school after, a successful career in design and architecture, to understand how, we get the money and finance the things that we want to build. And that led me to get my MBA at the Northwestern School of Management, where I ended up co-founding LIFEWE360 while still in school there. The idea really came out of an entrepreneurial class they offered called New Venture Discovery, which was really focused on getting out of the building and seeing if what you think is a problem is truly a problem by talking to the people who might be experiencing it. And so we spent that semester getting out the building and talking to people who had lost a loved one. We focused, our problem at the time was the stresses of funeral planning. And so we had conversations with people who had lost a loved one, planned a funeral, to better understand like where sort of the pain existed. And there was one conversation in particular that really pivoted our exploration to be around this idea of fading memories and what we can do to keep the memories of our loved one who has passed away alive. And it was a friend of my co-founders who had lost his older brother. He was in his early teens. His older brother was in his late 20s. And he knew his older brother as an older brother figure. But he knew a few of the stories of his older brother as a peer from some of his older brother's friends. And he was about the age of his older brother in his later 20s. And he talked about being terrified of losing these memories of his brother that exist with these other friends, that those relationships are fraying as well. And so this idea of being terrified of these memories and losing them in this day and age where our lives are captured and digital seemed like, okay, there's something there that feels like we can solve for. And we heard this over again of like, how do I introduce the full life of my brother, of my mother, of my grandmother who has passed away to these people that are in my life? How do I stay connected to the community they created? How do I not miss on the things that I didn't know I know of the full lives they lived? And so we looked at the space of really, memorializing your loved ones in different ways. And we noticed that there was a gap and a lot of workarounds. And so we said, let's try to see if we can bring our solutions to the market. And that's where we started. So we did a lot. We were lucky enough to be still in school when we started this process. And once we graduated, we continue building the business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And especially because I know a lot of people have ideas and it sounds like you put a lot of market research into it. So it was, something that was founded on actually hearing people's stories. I think your company, it's like a sad topic, but it makes so much sense. It's a simple solution to what people are looking for when they lose a loved one. Tell us a little bit about some of your success stories. Do you have any? I know you just mentioned the one where you founded the company, but do you have any particular success stories you want to share?
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit about LIFEWE360. So I realized I didn't give the overview of who we are and what we do. We're a digital space where communities can collaboratively capture and curate the memories of a loved one who has passed away, honoring their life in an authentic way. And essentially, our platform, it helps facilitate the place to, manage the collection of these memories and identifying the community that holds them. With the platform, people can share stories, photos, videos in a space that really celebrates that person's life. And the community can now create a gift of these memories that are curated, that uncover the moments of impact of that person's life. And also it preserves the support network of that community. So when the family is ready, they have these memories to come back to. And we've also identified the community that is there to support them by re-engaging them on important dates and ways to support the family. Some successes: when we first launched our platform out into the market in January 2020, so a little bit right before the start of the pandemic. And we've had, hundreds of LifeWebs since then. thousands of memories shared by friends, families, coworkers, person I met in the store once, some of the stories that we've seen on the platform. And we've been lucky enough to be able to have our platform be used to celebrate the life of New York Times bestsellers. We've had 5
Mm.
CEOs on the platform. One of our most successful one, which was one of the first that we did, was for Clayton Christensen, who passed away at the end of January, Harvard business leader, who one of the founders of the Jobs to Be Done framework. And that was LifeWeb that, ended up receiving hundreds of memories from students, from colleagues, from other business leaders who were inspired by his work, business leaders that he worked with, from his family, from his Mormon community. And that was really a place where people recognize sort of the value of a platform where we can bring all these desperate communities that a person may have been a part of, bring them together and show how that person that we're celebrating showed up in life and impacted all these different people. And so that was one really successful one for us. And we continue to have several like those on our platform where, even for a small family where, these moments of impact and these stories are brought out on how they showed up in the world. One of the things we do is when the memories are shared, every memory is provided with a life thread of how is this memory part of that person's life? Is it part of their childhood moments? Is it a family moment? Is it a friend moment, a time when they were in high school? And these help to uncover the meaning of that impact of that moment, as well as sort of where it lived within that part of the celebration of that life. So another life web that comes to mind in which that brought out success for that family was one life web where we later learned from the woman who started it. She had started it for her mother who had recently passed away. And we learned later, after she had used the life web for quite some time, that because of the life web, because of all these different memories that were shared by different people, the family had noticed a bunch of different memories from different seasons at this one particular park and realized how important that park was for their mother. And so they decided that their next celebration of life was going to be at this park. So these are
Wow.
these opportunities in which meaning is pulled out of these connections from the memories of this person that is added to our platform. That right there is also a success for us.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's so smart because I think when you're around family, but it's usually around key holidays, and everyone has their own lives, so it's so smart to collaborate and have everyone out in the community and the people that person interacted with tell that story of that person, because I'm sure the families are getting so many stories that they never heard of. It's almost like, to me, when you're talking, it made me think about getting your DNA tested and finding out about your family history. It's a little bit of like that, but it's more so present day. Present day. What was that person's background and history like? So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I think your name, LifeWeb360, really captures what your company does provide. So smart as well in terms of choosing your name. So how much does this all cost? What is the cost, and what are people looking at when they want to use your service?
So life webs are free to create. It's free to
Hmm.
get started. Each life web includes a 3-month memory collection period where you can collect unlimited amounts of memories, like that, stories, videos, photos. And then there's a $35 annual sponsorship to extend that memory collection, so that you can purchase, or someone in the community can purchase. Part of that is everyone may not be ready to share right at that moment. Someone may be ready to share, several months later, a year later. Everyone's on a different emotional timeline of how they want to sort of bring their moments and their memories to a life web page to honor that person. But then you can also purchase, custom URLs and other premium features to curate and collect sort of the memories on your platform. And again, anyone can sort of sponsor a life web for the family, a friend, a coworker. Anyone can really start it. We also have additional revenue streams on content created from the memories that are shared, such as a physical memory book, where the memories can be taken off of the life web and printed into a physical book to be held, to be cherished, that can be shared and printed for several people in the family, etc. Then premium features, as well as we have partnerships with organizations like hospitals and hospices.
Hmm. So how long does the Life Web stay up active? How long is it live?
So it is live for as it we never take a life warp down. It's really about the collection period. So the life warp remains static on the page unless you extend the ability to actually add additional content on there. And so that's sort of our revenue. We don't want to take the memories away. What we learned is that there's always new memories. There's always new things you learn about your person. And to be able to have that captured and collected in a single place that you can go to that has that level of reverence to really honor a person is what we're providing, especially in this day and age where, you know, the way that we do traditional funerals is declining. More and more people are being cremated. It'll be up to 80% in 20 years,
Wow.
where cremations overtake funerals in the US.
Hmm.
And so how we celebrate that person, particularly in this time where like our lives are captured digitally, we need a place where we can go back to celebrate that person's life. We're not going to the cemetery, right?
Wow.
So this is sort of like Cemetery 2.0, a place where we can continue to celebrate that person, continue those bonds, but also, because we're a digital platform, engage the whole community in those continuous, you know, milestones of celebration.
Wow. Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, you might even find a place that really resonated with that person, and instead of going to the cemetery, you go to that park or that beach or whatever was like most important in that person's life. But that's a really great and awesome idea and interesting idea in terms of what you come up with. And so I'm just curious, how do you actually get the word out? Are there any tactics that you feel have worked particularly well, or tactics that you think haven't worked well?
Yeah.
What are you doing in terms of that?
Good question. Good question. To date, a lot of most of our users who have come to a platform have come to us organically. We haven't done any sort of like active paid marketing, but what we do is content and SEO. You know, creating valuable content that brings people to our platform. Things like articles on how to support a grieving friend. You know, social distancing and grief during the pandemic. A big one that has brought users to our platform, which we put out right at the beginning of the pandemic, was how to do a virtual. It was a DIY guide on how to do a virtual funeral, like step by step. How do you, you know, get the community together? How do you use Zoom? How do you get a master of ceremony? Like how do you set this all up in this time where we can't come together, where our communities can't be in person to celebrate life, but we have platforms like Zoom and our platform. How do you integrate that to collect those memories to continue that celebration over time? So we do a lot of content that's really based in sort of this place and time, and that has brought users to our platform. There's also a bit of a virality aspect to our life webs. They are meant to be shared out to bring people in to share their memories, and we've seen sort of new life webs that have popped up in connection to a life web where they've shared a memory on one and they're like, oh, I want to have one for, you know, my mother who also just passed away. So I'm going to create one and invite her community to come to share memories as well. So there's a little bit of that. And then the third is sort of those partnerships with the hospices and the hospitals, also bringing users to our platform.
Man, so many questions. So one of the questions, actually, I'm going to go back to something you said a few minutes ago. Do you know why the cremation rate is going up, the percentage of people getting cremated? Do you have any idea on that?
I
Just kind
think
of curious.
it's a good question. I think a big part of it is that we're just in general, in a lot of ways, our communities are moving away from the traditional ways of doing things. And that involves the funerals, which have been, you know, in the US, particularly going to a funeral home, that like really mad dash one day, you know, 1 week burial, and like the ability, people are looking more and more for the ability to authentically celebrate their person. And because of various factors, cremations provide a little bit more time for you to do what you want to do to celebrate that person. That may be an aspect to it. I think there's various reasons as we continue to sort of expand globally. You know, different traditions in end of life also expand, and so there's different ways that we have been exposed to that people want to try to and see as being more authentic to celebrating their person than the traditional ways of doing a funeral. And I think that's part of the reasons why things cremations have been expanding. Another big reason as well is burials and funerals are very expensive. Cremations are much less so. So the money that you spend on the burial, like the burial versus cremation, that money can be spent on the actual celebration of that life, right? So those are the trade-offs that we see people sort of making it, and I think that's the reason why.
Interesting. So the other question that I had was, you mentioned you launched the company in January 2020. Were you planning on doing that, or did COVID accelerate your launch?
Yeah, so we actually launched. So we
Before
started
COVID. You started before
before
COVID.
COVID. Yeah, so we started in the
Hmm.
class in the fall of 2018,
Wow.
rather.
Oh,
And
okay.
then we graduated from Kellogg in the summer or June of 2020. Oh, sorry, again, 2019. And then we had our first sort of like MVP product prototype out that summer. So 2020, January 2020 was sort of the second iteration of that prototype where we felt we were ready to actually bring it out to the market. And that's when we launched that product. So we were very much working on this way before sort of the pandemic. But the pandemic did bring out awareness on the value that we were providing for families and really accelerated bringing that out to the market.
Yeah, it was like pretty good timing there. It's a good and a bad thing in a way, but yeah. So great though that you were able to offer that to so many families that were struggling during that time period. So I want to transition over to competition. So I know you had a good idea, but like lots of times when you have an idea, there's always somebody that had the idea as well, or
Mhm.
either latch onto your idea. Is there a lot of competition in this space?
Yeah, so it's an interesting space where there are a lot of things that people have done before. What we see is a lot of workarounds of like what people try to do when they want to celebrate their loved one. They may try to put a video together or a slideshow for the funeral, things like that. There are way too many sites who have tried to solve this problem by putting the funeral parlor onto a web page, and like and that is the place that you're supposed to go, where the funeral parlor, people don't want to go back to the funeral home because it reminds you that your person died, right? It's about that point in time, but their life is expanded past that point in time, and even after they've passed away. And so they're looking for a place that they continue to have that reverence and remind them of the life that their person lived. And what has been out there before, a lot of it looks like it was built early in the 90s and did not take into that into account. The best sort of workaround, or the most adjacent workaround we've seen, is Facebook, where or best analog is Facebook. But what we learned from talking to users who have done this on Facebook before is that it's not a space to have that reverence of keeping that person's memory alive. It sometimes can become a place for like grief tourism, where it's just more people are sort of watching what's happening or just leaving their condolences. And then any memories that are actually shared on that platform gets lost in the endless scroll. So it's not a place to actually be a collection to store the memories of your person. And so there's some competition out there, but they're not taking the approach that we are, which is really about celebration of life. Every aspect of our platform is is about continued bonds. An example is we don't have anything in the past tense on our platform, because when your brother passes away, he still is your brother. He was your brother, right? That relationship still continues. It just looks a different way. And so we take the approach where it's about those moments in life that happened when they were still alive, and we can share that. But also there's moments that we have with them in the future when we get together to remember them, that's also about their life as well. And so that's the approach sort of we take with our platform.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes me think about all the industries that have been disrupted, and it's almost like you disrupted the obituaries. So I wonder if this is going to be the modern day obituary, and there's not going to be any more paper obituaries.
I mean, obituaries are going by in the same route of the newspaper in some instances. So
I,
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not surprised. Yeah.
we definitely thought ourselves early on as being sort of a positioning toward as an
Hmm.
alternative to the obituary, because there's more depth and more breadth that we can provide to capture those stories.
Hmm. So did you win the competition at your school for your idea?
So it wasn't a competition; it was a class.
It was just a class. Okay,
It was just a
gotcha.
class. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like this would have been one of the top ones though, because you're
Yeah.
totally disrupting a
I,
space.
I take that back. At the end of the class, we did do for all the business ideas. We did do a sort of, it was everyone had to vote on where they wanted to. Everyone had fake dollars as a VC where they
Mm-hmm.
can vote
Mm-hmm.
with their dollars on a company they would invest in, and we ended up being the company that the vast majority of the class invested in the most.
Wow, congratulations. I'm not surprised. So I want to also talk about what do you think your product's going to look? We talked a little bit about the vision and how this fits in with the changing way people are the way people are acknowledging death. But what do you think Life Web 360 is going to look like in 5 years? What about in 10 years?
I think if we do this right, it probably won't look too different. It'll just be used in a lot of different use cases. Really, what we do is we make it super easy to collect the memories of a loved one who has passed away, but it's really about collecting the memories in a moment in time in which the community is ready to share those memories. We make it easy by having the person who starts this LifeWeb easy to bring in other people to help as admins who can choose the privacy settings to control who can see and who can share memories, and then inviting that to the rest of the community that's ready to share their memories and making it easy for them to be able to share those photos, stories, video, etc. And so what it really is about is these continued connections around milestones, and the milestone that we're starting off right now is when someone passes away. So 5, 10 years from now, we see there's a lot of milestones in a person's life. A lot of those moments when the community comes and they want to, share a toast of the impact that person may have had. So like retirements, for example, anniversaries, 90th birthdays, any milestone in which we see, there's this opportunity where the community wants to collect to share those memories of that person. We see that as a future use case for us to go into 5, 10 years from now. But that community building is a big aspect of it.
Yeah, there are so many use cases: marriages, new births, anniversaries. The possibilities are endless. So, what am I looking at here? The next billionaire? I don't know. Sounds like it. It's been a great ride. It sounds like you've had a lot of successes, but what mistakes have you made along the way?
It's interesting. I don't think I frame anything as a mistake because I tend to believe in being iterative. And so everything is sort of building on top of the thing before it. So it's more like we haven't made mistakes, we've made learning opportunities. And so anything we have an idea, we put something in place. When it didn't work, we see what we can learn from it and how we can adapt it or change it so that we can put it out again, see what works. And so I think in that framing, there weren't really any mistakes. But one thing that comes to mind is one of our first prototypes right before we were going to launch. We had gotten our first 10, 15 users, and like we were really getting to the next stage where we're like, okay, what is our plan to get to the next 100? And we were about to launch with this new version of our prototype, and we put it in front of a potential user who wanted to use it for an advisor of theirs who had just passed away, and completely teared it up and was like, I don't know if I can use this in the way that I had hoped. And what we realized, I think, was incredibly enlightening for us because it was a reminder to constantly integrate the user in the process of developing an idea. And so that was, I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but it was definitely a point of like, okay, we got to iterate on this again and use this new understanding to see where we can provide the value that the users are actually looking for and not what we want.
Okay, that's in it. I like the way you phrase it as it's an iterative process and you were building upon the last mistake. It's not really a mistake, it's a learning process. So, very smart philosophy. So, what gets you up every day? What have been your biggest joys about what you do?
Biggest joys, I think I talked a little bit from my background being in architecture and building things. I like building things, particularly building things that meet innate human need. And I think for me, seeing, as these memories come in every day, how, people are learning something new about their person, or finding a better way to hold on to those memories by using our platform because of something that, we've built, my team have built, that brings me a lot of joy.
You built something, yeah. And I think that's what we all want to do. We want to build something and leave something, a mark on the world. And you're able to do that with this company. So congratulations on that. I also want to ask you, because you're newer entrepreneur, but I'm sure you've had a lot of insights and learnings, and like you were saying, you've been building upon your learnings. So, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs?
I think the biggest advice I would give, and this comes from the experience I had in grad school, getting my MBA, and even the example that I gave for how we've dealt with mistakes, is you constantly find ways to talk to your users, talk to your customers, integrate them into the process of anything that you're thinking about or building, because that will always re-guide you to where the opportunity is, and how you can, if what you're building, the idea that you're creating to solve that problem, is truly meeting the value or solving the problem that they're looking for. One of the first things we learned is, if you are solving it, particularly early on, it doesn't matter what it looks like. The users are just going to be so happy that you're solving it and be like, okay, I'll give you my money. Thank you so much. And so that's the thing that you're sort of going after.
Hmm. Yes. And so it sounds like you're saying it doesn't have to be the most beautiful beta, as long as it is functional and has a pretty good user experience and you're solving the problem.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
And what you also made me think about is that you started with market research. So you started with really understanding where were those pain points and where were those white space opportunities. And you pretty much continued it throughout your process. So from every beta and every prototype, you asked users all along the way. And I think it's really important for a product, like an online product, to make sure that they're actually asking users, is this like the right experience? Is this the right features and things like that? So thanks so much for sharing that. I think a lot of people out there are going to find value from what you just said.
I hope so. And I hope it helps sort of bring the next big idea out into the market.
It's been great talking to you. I do want to ask you, what's next for LifeWeb360 and how can people find you?
Yeah, so what's next for us is we're continuing to build our platform, and create new features that make it, easier and more of a delight to be able to celebrate your loved ones. That's where we're focused on, and continuing to build out those partnerships with the different institutions that we can help them provide value to their clients and customers, like hospitals and hospices, even institutions like universities that may have, students and faculty, things like that. Lots of different places along those lines. But you can visit us at www.lifeweb360.com and check out what we have to offer. And you can also follow us and search for us, LifeWeb360, on Instagram and Facebook.
Well, I'll definitely be following you. Fortunately, I don't need you right now, but I want to at least be connected to you so that when that time comes, I'm able to remember where you are and who you are. So I'm sure our listeners will do the same. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.